a loving husband and father with so much to live for.
He did everything for his family. He was an amazing daddy. He loved life. He loved to be happy.
Is ruthlessly gunned down at home in front of his wife.
When he was laying there on the floor, nothing can prepare you for that.
They stood over the victim's body with a shotgun and delivered a fatal blow.
This wasn't just a random killing. This was an assassination.
Police tracked down several suspects.
She was absolutely the possible person who was involved. She had all the motive.
He began bragging about other involvements that he had had with acts of violence.
And we knew that he and the victim had some bad blood between them.
Just when police think they might never catch the killer,
We were pretty frustrated, and the wind was kind of taken out of our sails.
the case takes a mind-blowing turn.
She sang like a songbird.
He had been in possession of the guns used.
And law enforcement was pretty stunned by that.
To reveal a killer no one imagined.
This is unbelievable.
It was someone that if you passed on the street would look as innocent as they come.
The darkest, blackest soul.
Known for its white sand beaches, Panama City lies on the Gulf Coast of Florida's Panhandle.
Our biggest industry is tourism, with millions of people coming to enjoy the Gulf Coast.
The community is very tight. You know most of your neighbors, you know everybody that you do business with on a personal name basis.
But in the early hours of October 6, 1998, the town's sense of safety is rocked by a chilling 911 call.
At 3 o'clock in the morning, there was a call from a woman that her husband had been shot and killed.
There was a lot of shots. I ran back to the bedroom. The killer wasn't in the house. He was coming after us. I literally thought everybody was gonna die. And I was so scared.
Police race to the home, expecting to encounter an active shooter.
Their first thought is clearing that house, making sure that the killer's not still in the house.
As the officer entered, the first thing that he noticed was the victim's body in the kitchen area.
When they started calling out that they were the police and they were there, the wife was in a bedroom.
She had retreated to seek safety for her and her children, which were still in the house.
This is all just happening so quickly. I don't know how I'm supposed to trust that whoever's out there is not the killer.
Officers find no sign of the gunman and assure Angelica it's safe to come out of the bedroom.
The wife came out and she was very, very hysterical.
When they walked me back out, when he was laying there on the floor, I knew he was gone. You have somebody murdering your husband and shooting you, all in seconds. Nothing can prepare you for that.
Angelica identifies the man as her husband, 30-year-old Ron Stovall.
The children were taken to Ron's parents' house. They didn't live too far away. And the victim's wife went to the police department where we could talk to her.
With Angelica and the children out of harm's way, detectives can examine the crime scene.
As a responding detective, I go in and start looking around. Ron, the victim, he had been shot 3 times in the back, once in the hip, and there was a shot to the back of the head.
Investigators find an important clue close to the victim's body.
There were some bloody footprints there on the floor. Part of those footprints had what looked like the letter H, 2 H's kind of next to each other on the sole.
Whoever was wearing that shoe had perpetrated at least part of the crime, because they would have been standing in the victim's blood and then exiting the residence following the homicide.
The Stovall's front door also reveals how the murder unfolded.
We could see her husband was shot outside, and then the killer shot through the door, and he got into the house, and he had shot Ron in the back of the head.
As daylight breaks, a forensic team scours the outside of the home.
They found a handgun projectile out on the sidewalk near the driveway.
The killer shot what it clearly looks like a handgun round to the lower extremities, and then you have a shotgun round to the head. This was overkill. They stood over the body and delivered a fatal blow. When you see that type of crime scene, you're looking immediately for someone that displayed some type of grudge or emotional hatred for the victim.
While forensics wrap up their investigation at the crime scene, detectives head to the police station to speak with Ron's wife, Angelica.
We really took note how emotionally overtaken she was, but she had been an eyewitness to this scene, so she was critical in our investigation.
I can't even comprehend what's going on. He was dead. I did not want to live without him. Ron was truly amazing. He was always full of life, very kind, sincere, very real.
Born in Panama City, Ron Stovall was one of 4 siblings.
He was very close with his family. He was always out doing stuff with school, doing stuff with the church.
He was well known within the community.
Ron served almost 4 years in the Navy. He had felt a commitment to his country and enjoyed his naval service.
Ron always dreamt of having a family, and in 1989, he met his first wife, Tina Trexler.
Tina and Ron got married, and they had one child, they had a daughter.
The marriage was a rocky one, and after 6 years, it fell apart. Soon after, Ron met single mom Angelica at a local beach bar.
He said he knew from the second he saw me that he loved me. Our first night, we went on a date, took me to the beach, to the ocean, put out a blanket, listened to some Marvin Gaye, had Italian food. It was very romantic. He stole my heart, and I was never in love before. I just fell right into his arms.
In 1997, the couple married. Just like Ron, Angelica had a child from a previous relationship. A year later, their family of 4 became 5 when they had a daughter of their own.
Ron took on several jobs. He worked as a waiter. He worked as a delivery man for the UPS companies.
He was very dedicated, and he just got his massage therapy license. He did everything for his family. We were very happy.
Who would want to gun down this loving husband and father in cold blood? At the station, Angelica tells police how the murder unfolded.
I was able to tell the cops everything I knew, and I didn't try to hold anything back. Ron got up at about 3 o'clock every morning, and I would get up and make his lunch for him to take to work.
She explains how Ron left the house and was suddenly ambushed.
There were some shots. I didn't know what was going on. He collapsed on the ground, and the killer tried coming through the door, so I was fighting with him. He got his hand through, I grabbed the gun, and he opened the door with his hand, and I looked down that barrel of that silver gun, and he shot it.
The bullet just misses Angelica.
I ran back to the bedroom.
As Angelica shares more details about the deadly attack, detectives gain important information about the killer.
She described him as male, brown eyes, brown hair, and that he had some type of facial hair, possibly a mustache. She indicated hearing the assailant say to Ron as he was delivering the fatal gunshot wound, "This is for her."
It sounded very evil.
Angelica tells police she doesn't know the meaning behind the killer's words.
We needed to find out who her was, and we needed to find out what made this so personal to her.
Well, this wasn't just a random killing. This was an assassination, is what it was.
Investigators ask Angelica who might want Ron dead.
Immediately, she went to Tina, his ex-wife. Ms. Stovall indicated that the relationship between Ron and his ex-wife was volatile. There was a custody issue over their daughter.
Things got a little bit more sticky with the custody setup, and Ron was filing for full custody of the child.
Could the bitter custody battle have turned deadly?
This was an enormous red flag for us as a team. Whoever her was may have in fact had to do with his ex-wife.
It's probably one of the worst situations we ever deal with, is with the man and woman and children involved. It will just about make a person do anything.
Coming up, police uncover a key piece of evidence.
He brings out a shotgun round that is similar to the one that we've recovered from our crime scene,
Leading to a disturbing plot.
The photo identification that made him a prime suspect.
It was his eyes. What I saw was the same person.
And a sickening betrayal no one saw coming.
They planned this whole thing.
None of us had ever worked a case like this.
I do not understand how somebody can have so much hatred.
Police investigating the cold-blooded shooting of 30-year-old Ron Stovall are looking into his relationship with his ex-wife, Tina Trexler.
We knew that there was an extreme amount of tension between Ron and his ex-wife, and there was a custody battle that was forthcoming.
Ron and Tina originally shared custody, but Ron had filed a petition basically saying that he wanted full custody of the child.
Up to this point, Tina was that individual that had the most to gain from Ron's death. Perhaps she had not been the one on scene, but it still doesn't eliminate her as having some type of involvement.
This looked like certainly an intentional and a premeditated killing. Might have been a killing for hire.
Detectives speak to Ron's friends and family to get a clearer picture of the animosity with Tina.
When Ron remarried, it was okay, but not really okay. Tina, as well as her family, did not like the new wife, and the situation deteriorated between all of them.
As Ron and Angelica's family grew, Tina's behavior appeared increasingly erratic.
Tina began feeling that Ron was trying to work Tina out of the picture as the mother, and so that had really kind of amplified the rub and the tension.
There was all this, crazy fighting, and it was too hard for his daughter. We were just concerned.
This custody hearing was coming up in about 2 or 3 weeks from when this incident happened.
Tina was absolutely a possible person who was involved in this murder. She had all the motive.
Could the custody battle have driven Ron's ex-wife to murder? Investigators bring Tina in for an interview.
One of the things that was most alarming when we sat down with Tina was that there was no remorse, no emotional activity on her part, that she was even concerned that he was dead.
When investigators ask about her relationship with Ron, Tina's answer is surprising.
We knew there were a lot of hostilities, but when Tina was interviewed, she kind of painted that the relationship with them was cordial, it was friendly. It's a red flag for us as investigators because she's already showing signs of deceit.
With suspicions raised, detectives grilled Tina about her whereabouts in the hours leading up to Ron's murder.
She told us the night before the homicide, she had went to work at a local restaurant. She was a bartender. She got off sometime between 11 and midnight. She had went home and sat and watched TV with her mother. Then after that, she had went to bed, and at the time of the homicide itself, she had been home asleep.
Before police can press Tina further, the interview is interrupted.
Her mother had hired a lawyer for her.
The attorney made contact with Tina and immediately ended the interview.
Unable to finish questioning Tina, detectives look into her alibi.
Police were able to establish that she had been at work that night till 11:30, 12 o'clock.
Investigators also speak with Tina's mother, Ann Trexler.
She was the grandmotherly type and was helping Tina get back on her feet and help her get through this divorce.
And come across as a very down-to-earth, nice lady, a housewife, and she confirmed that Tina had been at the house with her watching TV.
Though Tina's alibi checks out, police still theorize that she could have hired someone to kill her ex-husband.
We conducted a preliminary investigation into her financial records. Everything was consistent with that of just a working-class individual making normal purchases.
1 week into the investigation with no concrete evidence pointing at Tina, police look for other suspects. They quickly discover Tina wasn't the only one in a dispute with Ron.
Tina had a boyfriend. His name was Adrian Harris, and there had been some confrontations between Ron and Mr. Harris regarding the way Ron was treating Tina. And in fact, at one point, there had been some threats made on Harris's part.
Had Adrian decided to confront Ron, leading to deadly consequences.
As we began looking into Mr. Harris, whether he was paid to do it or whether he did it on his own, we weren't sure, but the concern was that he may have perpetrated this to make good with Tina for the purpose of helping her.
Investigators tracked down Adrian over 900 miles away near Baltimore.
When we talked with Adrian, he did acknowledge that there was some bad blood between the two of them, but he really kind of downplayed the significance.
The day of the murder, he told us he went to work.
He had clocked in before 7:30, and the time of Ron's death was 3:30 in the morning.
Detectives checked travel times between Baltimore and Panama City.
There was not enough time to get to Panama City from several states away to do the murder and go back home.
While Adrian is ruled out, someone close by catches the investigators' attention.
We talked to his roommate, Guy McInville.
When the officers went to talk to Adrian's roommate, they discovered the description of the killer that Angelica gave to law enforcement. The roommate fitted quite well.
Guy McInville had brown eyes, brown hair, and he had a mustache. Now we had another individual that we want to look at.
Once we saw him, Guy fit the description. He was a roommate with Adrian Harris, and we knew that Harris and the victim had some bad blood between them. We thought maybe he went there to kill him.
Is this the break police have been hoping for? Investigators rush to confirm if Guy is a true match for the gunman.
We got pictures of him to show the victim's wife, Angelica, see if he could have been the one that she saw that night.
Back in Panama City, detectives include the picture of Guy into a photo lineup.
Angelica was an essential witness.
She was a witness who can identify the individual that did the crime. Her photographic identification, it was surprising.
It has been 2 weeks since 30-year-old father, Ron Stovall, was shot to death at home in front of his wife, Angelica. Now, detectives hope she can identify the shooter from a photo lineup.
She picked out Guy McInville as being the killer.
It was his eyes. There was something very, very similar. What I saw was the same person.
There was an identification of Guy McInville that made him a prime suspect.
We have Miss Stovall's positive identification of Guy as the individual that was in front of their house. There's a sense of relief that begins to sweep through the unit because you're finally on to a really developing hot lead. We want to now try to establish what type of physical evidence do we actually have between the victim, Ron, and Guy.
Detectives get a search warrant and race over to Guy's Baltimore residence. They make a telling discovery.
We search his items, and looking at me right square in the face was a pair of shoes consistent with the shoe impression that we had at the scene. So we're moving in the right direction.
Police bring Guy to the local police station for questioning.
Although we still were missing the key pieces of evidence, the guns and such as that, we really felt like we're starting to put together the edges of the puzzle. In speaking with Guy, what he provided us for an alibi was that he was in Maryland working. At the end of work, he went home, slept. The next day he got up, went to work, and so that was his alibi.
Detectives check out Guy's story.
We had had an opportunity to speak with Guy at his place of employment, and we were able to collect some video that correlated with his timeline of what he said. There was physically no way possible for him to have been here in Panama City at the time of the crime.
It turned out that what Guy McInville said to the police was correct. Guy had an alibi.
Eager to further prove his innocence, Guy volunteers to take a polygraph.
He successfully passed that. So we were able to clear Mr. McIngvale.
For police, it's a disappointing setback.
We were pretty frustrated, and it's a roller coaster. It's one of those, now you're back in the lows again, and the wind was kind of taken out of our sails.
Angelica wanted to help the officers along, but her perception at the time of the event was clouded by the terror, the trauma of the incident itself.
I remember him being the same person. It stuck in my head like that, but I was wrong.
It's difficult when you see something that quick that you can say, okay, this is the individual that did the crime.
We thought we had this thing solved, but you just got to go regroup, see what you still have to do, and you just start from there.
Desperate for new leads, investigators review Ron's autopsy report.
The autopsy confirmed 2 different weapons. They told us that it was a .357 round that he had been shot with, plus the shotgun shell. One big thing we learned was that shotgun residue got in his face. We think that Ron was laying there on the floor, and this guy's saying this is for her, and he presses that shotgun to the back of his head, and Ron's looking at him when that went off.
The forensics report contains another crucial detail that could lead police to the killer.
These were close proximity rounds, and so we knew that this was something personal. And the shotgun shell was paramount. It was a unique round. We would be able to identify it. So that was a plus in our corner.
Detectives shared details of the firearms with local law enforcement, hoping to track down their owner.
We work so closely with the different police departments in the area. We talk to them all the time in case something turns up.
As investigators continue to search for answers, Ron's loved ones struggle with their grief.
The best thing in my life was that life. I didn't think I was strong enough to go through anything without him. He was always full of life. Losing your soulmate, you can't even explain how much pain that was. It still is. It'll never go away.
3 weeks after Ron's murder, the investigation is threatening to grow cold, but then police receive a tip that reignites the case.
We got a call from the Panama City Beach Police Department. They had a home invasion out there on the beach. During that arrest, they recovered 2 handguns and a short-barreled shotgun.
They knew from the investigation of the crime scene where Ron Stovall was killed that a shotgun had been used and that a handgun had been used.
That coincides with what we're looking for. We wanted to go over the evidence they had and the circumstances.
Could these be the weapons connected to Ron's murder?
The gentleman that they arrested, we started looking into him and looking at his background and everything. And he had a pretty lengthy criminal history, had actually been linked to some murders in the past. He really caught our attention. This turned out to be a big break.
Police in Panama City are investigating the cold-blooded homicide of husband and father Ron Stovall. They now believe the missing murder weapons were used in a home invasion robbery less than 15 miles away.
When meeting with this investigator from the Beach Police Department, what he produced from his crime scene was this: a handgun and a sawed-off shotgun. That coincides with what we're looking for. Then he brings out a shotgun round that is similar to the one that we've recovered from our crime scene. We have everything that meets the parameters. Now we really believe we're on the right path.
The weapons are sent off to the crime lab. While detectives await the results, they dig deeper into this new lead.
At the Beach Police Department, they identified the individual as Tony Alberto Perez. He went by Tony. He had an extensive criminal history. There was some acts of violence in his past, there's some drugs in his past. They really felt like he was a pretty violent individual.
Another detail catches their attention.
Tony had brown eyes, brown hair, and facial hair. He looks just like our guy. He met Miss Stovall's physical description to a T.
Investigators head to the nearby jail where Tony is being held for the home invasion.
He come across as a kind of a likable guy. He was laughing and cutting up, but the more he talked, more red flags went up. He began bragging about other involvements that he had had with acts of violence. He was completely nonchalant about it.
Detectives turn up the heat and ask Tony if he killed Ron Stovall.
Tony totally denied any involvement, any knowledge of Ron, any knowledge of anything that may have happened on that date, and basically told law enforcement, it's not me, I'm not the person.
Despite Tony's denials, investigators believe he's withholding information, and they obtain a search warrant.
Tony Perez had items that he owned stored at the landlord's house, and we're searching through Tony Perez's items over there. And then we find a pair of work boot type shoes.
While inspecting the footwear, detectives notice a key detail.
Those work boots had what looked like the letter H, two H's kind of next to each other on the sole. It looked like what we had found at the crime scene. And we got those sent right off to the lab.
As police hunt for more incriminating evidence against Tony, the ballistic results come back.
And we actually got confirmation from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement that the guns collected that Tony had been in possession of matched perfectly ballistically to the rounds that we had recovered from our scene.
That evidence right there is one of the biggest things you could have in any murder case. You can find the weapons and find a person who has the weapons. That's major.
So now that we can put Tony, at least the guns, at the scene, that gave us the ability to change gears with Tony. We had the information and ammunition that we needed to confront Tony about what really happened.
Detectives head back to the jail to interview their prime suspect.
As Tony began to kind of spin his version of what happened to Ron, now he acknowledged having a little knowledge of it, but he said that he had loaned his guns to someone else and that he didn't know what they did with them. He didn't have any involvement in it. But what he says is that he had heard Ron was dealing drugs, and that's why he was killed.
We had already done a thorough background on Ron. We knew Ron was not involved in any drug business. We had talked to too many people. He was a happily married man trying to make it in life. That's what Ron was.
Then Tony gave us information that would kind of put us on some individuals that might be involved, and we tracked those individuals down, and we were able to confirm 100% that they had nothing to do with Ron's death.
People sometimes, when they are being questioned, especially when the police have some of the goods on them, will make up stories, and that's what Perez did. As far as the police could determine, that was a total concoction by Tony Perez.
Detectives believe Tony is lying, but wonder what motive he could have to kill Ron.
We were still kind of struggling to establish how Tony would have came into Ron's life.
Going through Tony's belongings, we found some cell phone bills there, and they were linked the name of Kim Miller. Kim Miller turned out to be Tony's girlfriend. So we went to talk to Kim.
Kim Miller is the owner of a Panama City hair salon.
Tony and Kimberly, they had been in a romantic relationship for several months.
We were told by Kim that Tony, he was doing odd things for her. He would come around the hair salon and he would actually shampoo customers' hair, clean up, sweep up the shop, things like that.
Investigators look for a connection between Tony and Ron Stovall.
Kim was familiar with the Stovall homicide. She claims that she first heard about it because she had a customer that had called in and canceled her hair appointment, saying how her ex-son-in-law had been murdered.
When detectives ask Kim for the customer's name, they receive a startling response.
The connection kind of came out of nowhere and almost as a surprise.
Kim's client is Ann Trexler, who happens to be Tina's mother. Tina, Ron's ex-wife.
believe husband and father Ron Stovall was shot and killed by criminal Tony Perez. They're now exploring a potential link between Tony and Ron's ex-wife, Tina Trexler.
When Kim Miller indicated that she styled Tina's mother, Ann Trexler's hair, and law enforcement was pretty stunned by that.
Ann Trexler is the mother of Ron's ex-wife, Tina.
We knew of the ongoing hostilities between Ron and Tina. So when we talked with Kim Miller, we asked her if she had ever met Tina, his ex-wife, and she did met her on a couple of occasions. Tina's mother, Ann, however, was a regular client, was in there on a regular basis.
With Tina previously eliminated from the investigation, detectives asked Kim more about Tina's mother, 52-year-old Ann Trexler.
She told us that Ann's talking to her and telling her about these problems with her daughter going through this custody battle with her ex-husband. And she was upset about it. She's afraid she's going to lose her grandchild.
Ann had told Kimberly the Trexlers had to get a second mortgage on their home to provide legal assistance to Tina.
Could the custody battle be the motive behind Ron's murder?
At that point, we were trying to determine exactly who she was. She hadn't really been on our radar at all. We knew that she was Tina's mom. We knew that she was Tina's alibi at the time of this crime.
Ann Trexler, no criminal history, supposedly a wonderful grandmother and fine Christian lady who would never be involved in something like this.
Investigators contact Ron's wife, Angelica, and learn his custody dispute with Tina brought out a different side to his former mother-in-law.
Apparently they had a good relationship when Tina and them were married, but it was just a constant battle over visitation rights. Always just such a fight with her.
Looking to see if Ann could have anything to do with Ron's murder, detectives bring her in for an interview.
When we talked to her, she stated to us that there was no way that she had anything to do with killing. She did not want him dead. Matter of fact, she said she loved him. And then Ann Trexler wanted a lawyer. And once they get a lawyer, you're done talking.
So we're kind of getting a heightened sense of concern as far as her involvement in the case, because she decided to basically not cooperate with the investigation.
Having hit a wall with Ann, detectives get a breakthrough when forensics results arrive.
We got confirmation that Tony's boot was consistent with the shoe impression that we had at the scene. Also, Tony had been in possession of the guns used. Now you've got a personal item putting him at the crime scene. At that point, we knew we had our shooter.
I mean, that's a big piece of evidence right there.
We were able to go back to Tony and present him with what we knew.
He admitted killing Ron. His very words were, "Okay, I did it." It's the shortest confession to a murder I've ever taken in my career.
Investigators push Tony to reveal how the crime unfolded, and what he tells them is shocking.
Tony told us that Ann Trexler wanted to have her ex-son-in-law killed and was willing to pay to have it done. When we found out Ann Trexler wanted to hire somebody to kill Ron, I mean, this is unbelievable. Ex-mother-in-law gonna get involved and have pay somebody to kill her ex-son-in-law?
He had met Ann at the hair salon. She was complaining about Ron and that the two of them had worked out a deal for Tony to kill Ron in exchange for about $10,000 to be paid to Tony.
On November 10, 1998, Tony is charged with the first-degree murder of Ron Stovall. But the case is far from over. Detectives turn their attention back to alleged mastermind Ann Trexler. Searching for answers, detectives pull Ann's phone records.
The phone records were a treasure trove of information. They showed a lot of phone traffic between Kim Miller and Antonio Perez and Ann Trexler.
It clearly looks like Kimberly was the middle person between Ann and Tony.
There were phone calls between the Trexler house and Kim Miller at strange hours of the night for strange amounts of time that could not be explained away by saying were setting up our rinse and set. Another thing, we were able to show that Ann Trexler received a phone call from Kim Miller the morning right after Ron's death. So there were links to tie Ann Trexler to this plot, but there was no hard, concrete connection of evidentiary value. We needed something else that would show that Ann, in fact, had hired Antonio Perez to kill Ron Stovall.
Tony Perez, he says that he had come to an agreement with Ann Trexler to kill Ron for $10,000.
Detectives scour Ann's financial records for any signs she had commissioned Ron's murder.
We have withdrawals from her bank accounts that coincide with when Tony says he was paid and the amount that he was paid. So now we have proof that what Tony's telling us is accurate regarding being paid. With regards to Ann, none of us had ever worked a case like this. So it was kind of a shock that all of these pieces were kind of lining up to support she is the motivation to this entire crime.
But we felt like we still could not make the case against Ann Trexler. We needed someone to corroborate what Tony Perez said. We needed somebody else that can draw the line between the money and the murder of Ron Stovall.
We have to go back to the middleman in the case, which is Kim Miller.
She's the whole key to this thing.
She was looking at criminal charges, but without her, we're not going to get Ann. She is the only way that we're going to have true accounts of what happened.
We went and picked up Kim Miller and brought her in.
Kim Miller, she stonewalled. She said, no, I'm not talking to you. I'm not telling you anything.
Investigators working the Ron Stovall homicide have charged shooter Tony Perez with murder and believe the mastermind is Ron's former mother-in-law, Ann Trexler. But to build an ironclad case, they need Tony's girlfriend and go-between, Kim Miller, to share what she knows. However, Kim is refusing to talk.
It really wasn't until we actually laid out in front of her the phone records and drew the lines between Ann and her and Tony that we were able to convince her to cooperate with the investigation.
We let her know, she was going to be charged with accessory to the murder, and she's facing life in prison.
Prosecutors offer Kim a deal, a reduced sentence in exchange for testifying against Ann Trexler. Eventually, Kim takes the deal.
Kim sang like a songbird.
Kimberly was very adamant that there was a deep-seated hatred for Ron on Ann Trexler's part.
She indicated that on many occasions, Ann Trexler ranted and raved about Ron Stovall, how bad he was, that he was going to remove her granddaughter. She wished that somebody would take him out, and it got more and more. Finally, Kim said, okay, if you're really serious, I know somebody who might help you.
Kim lets her know that her boyfriend, Tony Perez, will get rid of him for $10,000. That's how the deal came about.
Kim then reveals how in the early hours of October 6th, Tony drove to the Stovall house to lie in wait for Ron.
About 3 o'clock in the morning, when Ron went out to his vehicle, Tony took a shot at him with a pistol. And Ron ran inside and slammed the door behind him, and Tony Perez fired more shots, which struck Ron in the back.
To finish Ron off, Tony tried to force his way inside the house.
Angelica, she tried to hold the door, and Tony Perez fired a shot that almost struck her. She ran to the other room to call 911.
Tony Perez came in, and he found Ron on the floor and walked up with a shotgun, said, "This is for her." Boom. He killed Ron Stovall right there.
When he made the statement, "This is for her," it's our belief that Tony was doing this on Ann's behalf.
Tony came there to do one thing, and that was to kill Ron Stovall.
Once he had made his getaway, he was able to reach out to Kimberly and make notice to her that, in fact, the job had been done. And then, of course, she notified Ann.
Kim swears Ron's ex-wife, Tina Trexler, wasn't involved in their murderous plan.
Law enforcement looked at Tina Trexler. Her mother, Ann, may have confided in her, but no one could get to that much evidence to put Tina in the situation of taking Ron's life.
Ann Trexler, she tried to be the grandmotherly type, but she planned this whole thing.
Ann Trexler's thought pattern was Ron Stovall is getting ready to take my only precious granddaughter away from me, and I won't have visitation, and he left my daughter, he married somebody else. He should not be able to get away with this.
From an investigator's perspective, Ann carried just as much weight as Tony. Without Ann, Tony would not have even known who Ron Stovall was.
On February 15th, 2000, Ann Trexler is formally charged with the murder of her former son-in-law, Ron Stovall.
And the cops called and he said, got her, she's in jail. She is morbidly evil. The darkest, blackest soul ever. And then she'll put on a face like she's just Miss Innocent. The killer, he didn't know Ron. Ann knew Ron. I do not understand how somebody can have so much hatred in their body, in their mind, in their heart.
In court, shooter Tony Perez pleads guilty and is sentenced to life without parole. In February 2000, Kim Miller is sentenced to 5 years probation as part of her deal with prosecutors. Finally, in 2001, Ann's trial begins and she pleads not guilty.
Ann Trexler took the stand. She testified about not being involved. She testified about her concerns of her grandchild and the fact that she had absolutely no involvement.
On May 14th, 2001, the jury finds Ann Trexler guilty of first-degree murder. She's sentenced to life in prison without parole.
There's a little piece. I'm in a little piece in this horrible thing. A little justice, I guess.
Gets a little emotional sometimes. It's not just me. You know, we're a whole team working this thing. We celebrated, I'll just say that. We celebrated this.
The most striking thing to me is that these are all ordinary people. And it's a little bit frightening to think that people who are walking around living everyday ordinary lives would be capable of this.
The one that initiated it all was someone that if you passed on the street would look as innocent as they come.
For Ron's family, his loss continues to be deeply felt.
I miss him and I love him so much. My poor daughter, she never got the honor she deserved. She never got her daddy. We celebrate his life all the time. He loved life. He loved to be happy. And I've tried so hard to keep his memory alive. Very much so. I will never forget how amazing Ron was.
A charming and spirited young mother.
Oh, she was so vivacious, like a little firecracker. She was sweet and loving, but she just didn't take any crap off anybody.
Is found strangled in her bedroom.
Whoever did this left her there with no chance to survive.
Police face a challenging crime scene.
There was no forensic evidence whatsoever. No fingerprints, no eyewitnesses.
This case was a definite whodunit case.
And a long list of suspects.
He had been hanging around her desk and he had made some comments that really creeped her out.
She had had some troubled boyfriends in the past.
He didn't want to accept the fact that they were done. Their relationship was over.
You would think that whoever did it had a score to settle.
Until one big break reveals a culprit.
That one key piece of evidence was the aha moment in the case.
And it shocks everyone.
When they finally discovered who it was just surreal.
There's no rhyme, there's no reason behind it. It was absolutely senseless.
Just before 5 p.m. on a Monday in March of 1999, in the small bedroom community of Norcross, Georgia, police raced through the suburban streets in response to a 911 call.
The only information that we had at hand initially was there had been a person discovered dead in an apartment. It was her fiance that had called 911. When we arrived at the scene, we spoke with the fiance briefly.
The man tells detectives the victim is 20-year-old mother of one, Danielle Jennings. Her 2-year-old son is currently at daycare.
The fiance told us he walked in and found her lying on the bed, and he stated that she was cold and blue.
She was deceased by that point. She was face down on the bed, and he rolled her over and then called 911.
While Danielle's fiance is taken to provide a statement, investigators take a close look at the crime scene.
When you went back into the bedroom, she was on the bed, fully clothed, laying on her back, but you could obviously see signs of strangulation.
She had a ligature around her neck. The ligature appeared to be some type of stocking, and it was tied around her neck very, very tight.
It had been tied off to leave it that way. It's not like it released, which I thought was pretty unusual. I mean, whoever did this left her there with no chance to survive.
The ligature was knotted in the back, which would tell you that the person was on her back, behind her when she was strangled.
Detectives explore the rest of the crime scene, looking for clues.
The bed was messed up. One of the dresser drawers was open. The stocking that she was strangled with may have been one of hers out of that drawer. Her purse was dumped out as if somebody had dumped the contents and rummaged through it. It could have been a robbery or a burglary just gone wrong. However, there was other stuff such as cameras, miscellaneous jewelry that could have been taken, but they were not taken.
It was possibly a burglary that had been interrupted, but you always have to consider the possibility that it could have been a staged burglary because, frankly, there really wasn't a lot of disruption.
Next, investigators try to determine how the killer entered the apartment.
There was absolutely no tool marks or anything on the front door, and then there was a sliding patio glass door. It was locked. There was no evidence of tampering with it at all. We went around and we searched the outside, but we didn't turn up anything of any value.
Before they return to the station to interview Danielle's fiance, detectives fan out to speak with other tenants in the complex.
Most of the people in these complexes work during the day, and so most of them are not home. We left our business cards with a note asking them to please give us a call.
As the crime scene investigation continues, news of Danielle's violent murder quickly spreads to her family and friends.
When I found out that Danielle died, I said, no, you've got to be kidding me. I said, this cannot be real. And then I dropped the phone and I just started screaming. I was just absolutely in utter shock. How does one handle the information that your best friend, your sister, the person that you basically love more than anybody in this world is gone? Why would somebody do this to such a loving, caring, beautiful person?
Born in Columbia, South Carolina in 1978, Danielle grew up with her mother and stepfather in Stockton, Georgia. Even in her youth, Danielle had a magnetic personality.
She was beautiful, strong, tenacious, ferocious. She was very fun. Danielle was always ready to have a good time, to laugh.
Oh, she was so vivacious, like a little firecracker. She was very tiny, but she had this big attitude. She was sweet and loving, but she just didn't take any crap off anybody.
Danielle showed her resilience when she was left to deal with an unplanned pregnancy alone at the age of 16.
There was never a doubt in her mind that she wanted to have that baby. She wasn't scared. I mean, she had brass balls of steel.
She wasn't going to let her age stand in the way of being a good mother.
Danielle gave birth to her son, Tristan, in 1996.
She was so proud. I could see her little attitude in him.
The new mother longed for her son to have a father and hoped she had found one when she started dating Luis Payano.
We grew up with Luis, so we go way back with him. We met Luis in our early teen years. Danielle was always partial to Luis, and Luis and Danielle were dating, and I was so thrilled. And the way that Luis would look at Danielle, like she would walk into the room and he would just light up.
Soon, the couple moved into an apartment together, and Danielle landed an office job at a landscaping company.
She was so excited to have like what we titled a big girl job. She was very proud of herself. We were all very proud of her, you know? She was going places.
In December of 1998, Luis asked Danielle to marry him.
She was so excited, and I'm like, this is gonna be the best marriage ever. When Danielle first got her engagement ring, it was too big. And I said, girl, you gotta get it sized. She's like, I don't wanna take it off. It was beautiful.
Danielle had everything going for her. She had a great career opportunity ahead of her. She had a man she was so excited to marry. She had a beautiful son that just meant the world to her. Danielle was really on top of her game.
She was probably the happiest I had ever seen her.
Now, all Danielle's happiness and hope has been stolen by a cold-blooded killer.
I could not even begin to fathom why somebody would do that to her.
Back at the crime scene, investigators are searching for answers.
The scene raised several questions. Of course, the most obvious was, how did whoever it was get into the apartment? Because there was no sign of forced entry. Was it someone she knew? We know, working off the percentages, that the person most likely to kill you is laying next to you in the bed. In this case, Danielle's fiance, Luis.
Coming up, detectives unearth dark secrets.
She had had some troubled boyfriends in the past.
He was violent. He was abusive. You could tell when he talked about Danielle that it made him mad.
He was just very, very creepy to me. And I know they had tumultuous fights.
The person that did it could have been amongst us.
And just as the case threatens to turn cold,
We felt like we had hit a brick wall.
I had a huge fear that whoever it was got away with it.
a stunning revelation points to a killer no one suspected.
The killer was much closer to home than anybody first thought. I don't think anybody saw it coming.
Police investigating the murder of 20-year-old mother Danielle Jennings have their first suspect, her fiance, 25-year-old Luis Payano.
Even though he's her fiance, everybody remains a suspect until such time that we solve the crime.
Investigators question the distraught young man.
He was very emotional, but romance can raise anger to a level sometimes that leads to homicide.
Detectives begin their interview by asking Luis about Danielle's movements the day of her murder.
He stated that he had been at work all day. The last time he had seen Danielle was when he left to go to work.
According to Luis, they had both left the apartment at 6:45 a.m., but Danielle went back into the building to get something. He tells detectives that Danielle seemed distracted because of an upcoming work meeting.
She was supposed to be having a meeting with management that day. She didn't feel easy about it.
Luis says Danielle called him at work around 11:30 a.m.
She wanted to see if Luis would have lunch with her, but he was tied up at work and he couldn't break free.
They didn't have lunch, and later in the afternoon, he couldn't reach her.
He called her at work, and then they told him that she had gone home at lunchtime, but she didn't come back from lunch after a couple of hours.
Luis tells investigators he called Danielle's cell phone and their apartment.
He stated that he was trying to get hold of Danielle and was not getting a response, and then he left work and went home to see if she was there.
Luis said that when he got home, the front door was unlocked, and that really surprised him because they were pretty careful about keeping the front door locked.
Detectives ask Luis about his relationship with Danielle.
We wanted to find out if they had domestic issues. He said that it was a very good relationship and they were very much in love with each other.
To verify his story, detectives call Luis's work and Danielle's loved ones.
Her family and friends stated that they were just a young couple that were very much in love and looking forward to getting married and spending their life together.
She had had some troubled boyfriends in the past, but Luis was on the up and up. I mean, he was setting up a financially stable life for him and Danielle and Tristan, and she loved him so much.
Danielle's friends are adamant that Luis would never harm her, and his alibi seems solid.
We were able to confirm that he had been at work all day through statements of his coworkers. As a result, he was eliminated as a suspect. Now you're on the hunt for other suspects.
With Luis in the clear, detectives ask him if he knew of anyone who may want to harm Danielle.
He brought up the name of Jeff, a co-worker of Danielle. She had filed a sexual harassment complaint against him at work. That piqued our interest a little bit. We immediately went to Danielle's place of work and we met with her supervisor and discussed what was going on.
Danielle's supervisor tells detectives about the young mother's harassment complaint against her coworker.
He was a middle-aged man. He worked at the same landscape company. He had a different job. He was in management. Danielle told her manager and supervisor he had been hanging around her desk and he had made some comments that really kind of creeped her out and acting inappropriately at work.
There was a big age difference between Danielle and Jeff. He was 40, she was 20. He had asked her out for lunch and she told him that she had a fiance that she loved, and he had made a comment to her that if he was 20 years younger, things would be a lot different.
Danielle had briefly touched base with me about the situation that she was having at work. Dude was kind of crushing on her and she was trying to get that, under control. But I said, just don't let it get out of hand.
She filed the complaint. I kind of admired her grit. She wasn't going to take it. The company was very responsive to her complaint. They took it seriously. They moved quickly.
Detectives note the timing when told of the company's response.
That day that Danielle was killed, she was supposed to be having a meeting with upper management about the sexual harassment charge.
Once we realized that the meeting had taken place that day, that was something that was suspicious.
Talking with the management, we found out Danielle was anxious and nervous about the meeting.
She was a relatively new employee when she made the complaint. That was one of the reasons she was so nervous, because his career was in a certain amount of jeopardy.
Coworkers state that after the meeting, Danielle went home for lunch, but never returned.
She didn't come back, and we knew that was consistent with the time of death. You had to think, where was the coworker at the time?
Detective suspicions increase when they learn that Jeff was out of the office and did not return until late in the day. Was this too much of a coincidence? Could he have killed Danielle as revenge for her complaint?
We definitely wanted to speak with him face to face.
Detectives hunting the killer of Danielle Jennings suspect a harassment complaint against her coworker, Jeff, may have led to retaliation and murder.
We were now focused on him as a possible suspect. We had to consider the possibility that he followed her home and ambushed her and killed her.
Investigators bring the 40-year-old in for an interview and ask about his interaction with 20-year-old Danielle.
He admitted to asking her out for lunch, but he said other than that, he had not done anything.
He talked about the sexual harassment complaint and pretty typically said, you know, I didn't think it was that big a deal. I didn't know she was that offended.
According to police reports, Jeff denies any sexual intentions toward Danielle.
He told police that whatever lapse in manners that he had had with Danielle, that he liked her. He seemed to be genuinely dismayed to find out what had happened.
Detectives ask if Danielle's complaint gave him a reason to want to harm her.
His first reaction was he was angry. He was adamant that he was not a suspect. And then he said it couldn't have been me because my truck was broken and I was on a job with somebody else, with a coworker, and I can prove it.
Jeff provides investigators with the name of the coworker he claims to have been with.
We immediately ran down his coworker at like 1 o'clock in the morning. This guy verified that he was with him all day till the close of business. They were together.
With his alibi confirmed, police eliminate Jeff as a suspect. 24 hours after Danielle's murder, the enormity of her death is only just starting to hit home for Danielle's loved ones.
Things like that didn't happen where we grew up. I could not believe somebody would do that to her. It was just the most nightmarish thing I could imagine. It made me question God. Why would you let something that horrible happen to her?
I didn't want to accept it. I couldn't sleep. I just kept saying, she's dead, she's dead. Danielle should not be dead.
The following day, investigators receive the autopsy report and scour it for anything that might point to Danielle's killer.
The manner of death was asphyxiation or strangulation.
The medical examiner stated that she probably lost consciousness within about 15 to 20 seconds after the ligature was placed around her neck.
It seemed clear that she had been surprised by her attacker, had no time to move, had no time to strike back.
It's almost like it came out of nowhere. We knew from the positioning of the knot, someone had come up behind her with the nylon stocking, pulled it tight until she lost consciousness, and then tied it off to kill her. She had not been sexually assaulted. There weren't any other injuries. There weren't any defensive injuries.
This case was a definite whodunit case. There was no evidence found at the scene that could help us.
There was no forensic evidence whatsoever. No transfer of skin, no fingerprints, nothing a lab could look at.
After striking out with the autopsy, investigators revisit the theory that the homicide was a robbery gone wrong.
We don't live there, so we don't know what's supposed to be there and what's not. We asked the fiance to go back through the apartment with us and tell us what he sees missing. The smallest detail sometimes helps point us into the direction of a suspect, but nothing was missing according to the fiance. At that point, we had absolutely nothing to go on other than the stocking that she was strangled with.
Detectives ask Luis if he recognizes the stocking.
We wanted to know whether it came from her. It was a tan knee-high women's stocking, and he said that she never wore anything like that, and we didn't find any in the apartment. Whoever did this brought that with them.
The homicide was brutal, violent, and vicious. It lent itself to a personal motive. You would think that whoever did it had a score to settle.
Louise told us she had had some tumultuous relationships in her past, so we pursued that angle.
Investigators asked Danielle's friends about her previous relationships.
When they first started questioning me, they were asking me a lot of questions about her boyfriends in the past, who I felt might have been able to do it. And then it clicked that, Eddie, he was a tow truck driver and he was a big guy. And he was just very, very creepy to me.
Her best friend told us about her ex-boyfriend. He was violent, he was abusive.
She ended up having to get a restraining order on him. But with Eddie, no one ever really knew when he was going to pop up again.
That was somebody we needed to look at.
Two days after the murder of 20-year-old Danielle Jennings, friends have alerted investigators to Eddie McElwaney, an ex-boyfriend with a violent history.
We learned a lot about her former boyfriend. We learned that she had begun to see him when she was a teenager, when she was younger.
Friends reveal Danielle started dating Eddie shortly after she became pregnant from another relationship. But Eddie's behavior soon raised red flags.
As they got more serious, he became more possessive and controlling, and he definitely wanted to start isolating her from her friends and family more.
I didn't want to be around him. I did not like the way he made me feel. I didn't like the way he looked at Danielle. I mean, he would sometimes look at her with disgust. And I know they had tumultuous fights.
We learned it had been an abusive relationship, physical and emotional.
I mean, she would stand up to anybody, but as tough and as a badass as she was, I think she was a little bit afraid of him.
Things only got worse with Eddie when Danielle gave birth to her child.
Her family and friends stated that shortly after her son was born, Eddie was getting involved in drugs, and that was finally the straw that broke the camel's back, and she ended the relationship with that.
Danielle moved out and tried to start fresh, but Eddie had other plans.
She knew it was going to be difficult, but she didn't realize that Eddie was not going to leave Danielle in peace. He didn't want to accept the fact that they were done, their relationship was over. She never knew when he would turn up around the corner, when she just wanted to be left alone.
She had gotten a restraining order against Eddie because he had been stalking her. He had been driving back and forth in front of her house. He had gone to her work, and she was in fear that she was in danger.
We found out that he had violated the restraining order several times. He would call her, leave voicemails for her. He would drive by her house several times a day or night.
When police ask when Eddie last contacted Danielle, the answer is troubling.
Danielle's family had told us that within the last few months, he had been calling her, trying to get her to talk to him, but she would just hang up on him.
Could Eddie have shown up at Danielle's apartment the day she was killed, leading to a deadly confrontation?
I've seen a lot of domestic abuse cases, so I knew that there was a possibility that with his past, that he could have done something like that.
Investigators track down Eddie and bring him in for questioning.
In the interview with Eddie, he was kind of belligerent and unhappy to be there and a little bit hostile. You could tell when he talked about Danielle that it made him mad. What we saw with Eddie certainly had all the earmarks of a domestic violence case.
When questioned about his relationship with Danielle, Eddie's responses raised detective suspicions even more.
When he was asked about the relationship, his version was a little bit different. He never mentioned any abuse. He thought everything was great.
We asked him when was the last time that he had had any contact with Danielle, and he said that he had not talked to her for at least a year or longer. We know that he's lying about that. From speaking with Danielle's family and friends, we knew in the last several months he had been calling her.
At that point, he's looking pretty good. So you have to determine where he was at the time of the crime.
Eddie tells detectives that he was working many miles away from where Danielle was killed.
He said that on his job as a tow truck driver that he had to go out of state.
Investigators immediately look into Eddie's alibi.
His boss verified that he was out of state, and he was able to produce hotel receipts, gas receipts that showed that he was actually out of state at the time of the crime.
Whenever he responded to a legitimate call, he had to log it, and his whereabouts could be verified throughout the day.
That is a pretty tight alibi, so he was eliminated as a suspect.
It's another dead end for detectives.
Once again, we're knocked for a loop and we're back to ground zero, and he moves down the line and we're looking for somebody else.
It was infuriating. It was frustrating. I had a huge fear that whoever it was got away with it, because people get away with murder every day. I was really hoping that the detectives would find something, because you're sitting here trying to point a finger at somebody that you don't know who.
There was this air of suspense around everything because we didn't know at that time who had killed Danielle. The person that did it could have been amongst us.
We had basically eliminated everybody who was close to the victim. When you get to that point of an investigation, you don't have anywhere else to logically follow up.
With no more leads, the investigation is at a standstill.
We felt like we had hit a brick wall. And then we got a call that changed everything.
Three days after finding Danielle Jennings strangled in her apartment bedroom, police hunting her killer have just got a stunning new lead.
We received a phone call from a Miss Kirk that resided at the apartment complex.
The woman tells detectives about a disturbing incident that took place a week before Danielle was killed.
She was awakened one morning by someone knocking at the door, and she looked out the peephole but didn't see anybody there, so she went back to bed. And a few minutes later, she hears the front door open, and the maintenance man is standing there. The maintenance man says that he's there for a work order. However, Miss Kirk says she felt very uncomfortable the entire time that he was in there because he was always staring at her, like he was more preoccupied with her than he was completing the work order.
The woman cannot provide the name of the maintenance man, but she gives a description to police. Detectives head back to Danielle's apartment complex to investigate.
While speaking with the management at the complex, we found that there was another case similar in the past from a Miss Bruno that lived in the apartment complex.
Management told the detectives that someone had walked into this woman's apartment. She had, of course, asked him who the heck he was. "What are you doing in my apartment?" And he said maintenance, and claimed that he was there to change light bulbs. And she said, "I don't have any light bulbs to change." He kind of mumbled and stumbled, and then, maybe I have the wrong apartment, and he backed out and left. It was so similar to the other one, which of course raises our eyebrows.
The complex was big enough so that there were several maintenance workers, but only one closely fit the description given by the young ladies. That would be Calvin Oliver.
We showed a photograph of Mr. Oliver to Miss Bruno and Miss Kirk, and both of them identified him as the person that had walked in on them.
Investigators discover a disturbing trend emerged after Calvin had been hired 7 months ago.
Come to find out, there had been several burglaries reported where items had been stolen out of apartments that had no forced entry.
Could Calvin have been responsible for these thefts?
We learned that he had an apartment in the complex. The fact that he lives there makes it so accessible that he could walk around, not be suspicious. We also learned that the custodians had access to the master keys of every apartment. He has complete access.
Detectives search for any link between Danielle and Calvin.
We found out that he had done a work order in her apartment a couple of weeks prior to the murder.
That is somebody that you really want to look at. It went back to our original theory of if this was a burglary, then it had been interrupted. He could have known that Danielle Jennings was gone during the daytime, and he decided that day that he was going to enter that apartment.
Investigators haul Calvin Oliver in for an interview, but make the call to slow play their suspicions.
When Oliver was brought in for questioning, we didn't want to tip him off to anything about the homicide. So he was interviewed initially about the burglaries. He absolutely denied any of that. He said, I didn't steal anything, I didn't go into apartments. He denied any involvement in any burglaries.
The 42-year-old tells detectives that his intrusion on the two women in the complex was a simple misunderstanding.
Once we got around to interviewing him about the murder, the first question was, did you hear about this? It was kind of odd. You would have thought that a person who worked in that apartment complex and was there every day would have heard everything about it. He went, yeah, I think I heard something about it. I don't know much about it. I don't know that woman.
He insisted he knew nothing about, as he described her, that dead girl.
All he admitted to knowing her was that he had done the work order in her apartment.
At that point, we had a pattern of conduct going into apartments. We had the admission that he had been in the apartment, but we had nothing that directly linked him to the murder.
With nothing concrete on Calvin, detectives end the interview. But before they let him walk free, police run a background check and are shocked by what they find.
He had a criminal history of burglary and theft. There was an outstanding warrant on him for failure to appear on a burglary charge in another jurisdiction. That day that Danielle was killed, if he's in there and she walks in on him, that would be a reason for him to cause her harm because he doesn't want to go back to prison.
He had an outstanding warrant, so he was held for that, and that bought them enough time while they investigated.
Based on the burglaries that had occurred in the complex, we obtained a search warrant for his apartment. We're trying to see if we can find anything that would tie him to Danielle Jennings. We're looking for any type of the stockings or pantyhose or anything that would be similar to the one that we found tied around her neck.
Detectives find no matching stocking, but they do discover incriminating evidence.
We do find evidence of the other burglaries that had been committed in the complex. And then we also found out that he had possession of a master key for the apartment complex so that he could open any door on any building at any time, and he was not supposed to be in possession of that key.
It's only enough evidence to allow investigators to charge Calvin with burglary.
We concluded that search with those items, but nothing was found relevant to the murder. You really don't have anywhere else to go at that point.
We don't have a stocking, we don't have anything that ties him to Danielle or her apartment at all.
That's where we were until Luis called. Out of the blue, he said, do you have the engagement ring?
We told him, no, we don't have a ring. We didn't know one was missing. And then he describes the ring, and then the big bright light goes off. When we were doing the search on Oliver's apartment, we noticed a ring on a dresser in his bedroom, but the ring didn't match any of the items stolen, so we really didn't have a reason to seize it at that time. We do another search warrant, go back into the apartment, we seize that ring, we show it to the fiance. He can't positively identify the ring, but he says her best friend will definitely be able to identify it. If we were able to identify that as being Danielle's ring, that would physically tie Oliver to Danielle and her apartment on the day that she was murdered.
With the entire investigation on the line, detectives race to the home of Danielle's best friend.
Is that ring the engagement ring? This is something we gotta know.
Investigators believe the key to solving the murder of Danielle Jennings is her missing engagement ring.
If we had that ring, then we had the killer.
Detectives have seized a ring from suspect Calvin Oliver's apartment. But is it Danielle's engagement ring? They hope her best friend can answer that question.
The detective and Lewis were there, and I said, well, what's going on? And the detective looked at me and he said, Leslie, he said, do you know what Danielle's engagement ring looked like? And I said, yes, sir, I do. The detective said, is there any defining characteristics to this ring? He goes, and I need you to be specific. And I said, yes, sir. I said it was bent. She had bent the band so it stayed snug on her finger because she wouldn't take the dang thing to get sized.
We needed to find out when was the last time she had seen her wearing the ring.
I said, I saw Danielle the Sunday before she was killed, and she had a ring on Sunday night. And he takes the evidence bag out and he says, is this her ring? And the minute I saw it, I knew it was hers.
When we had that ring and had it identified as being hers, we knew that we had the guy. We knew we had the right person.
Finding the ring was the aha moment in the case. And that was the piece of evidence that allowed us to charge Calvin Oliver with murder.
9 days after her death, Calvin Oliver is arrested for the murder of Danielle Jennings.
The primary charge was malice murder, and that means that you intentionally and unlawfully kill another human being.
Detectives once again interview Calvin, this time taking a different approach.
Once you have a suspect under arrest for the charge that you're interviewing him about, then the interview becomes very direct. He was given a chance again to tell the story where he denied any involvement in the murder, and then he was confronted with the evidence that we had.
We told him about the ring, and that's when he said, well, I stole that ring 2 weeks ago when I did the work order in her apartment. But see, we knew that was a lie because we had people that had seen her wearing the ring, so we knew that he was lying about that.
Calvin refuses to answer any more questions.
We told him that he was being charged with malice murder because you took the pantyhose with you into the apartment because you had intent to harm someone, and he said there was no intent there, which was a good comment to have in a statement. It's like he admitted to killing her without knowing that he had admitted to it. We were convinced 100% that we had our guy. This is the guy that was responsible for the death of Danielle Jennings, and that we were going to send him to prison for the rest of his life.
News of an arrest in Danielle's murder brings relief to her loved ones and surprise.
When they finally discovered who it was, the maintenance man in her apartment building, it was just surreal.
I don't think anybody saw it coming. The killer was much closer to home than anybody first thought.
When I saw his picture, I threw up, knowing that that was the man that strangled my best friend for no reason.
At trial, prosecutors present how they believe the crime unfolded.
The day Danielle was killed, Mr. Oliver had already let himself in, hoping for financial gain. After the HR meeting about her coworker, Danielle went home for lunch by herself. Once she opened the door and stepped in, he knew she was there, and he knew she could not exit again. He was not going to get caught.
He ambushed her from behind with the stocking. He came over her head. He pulled it tight, pushed her down onto the bed until she lost consciousness, and then he tied the ligature off, and there was no way for her to escape. There was no heat of the moment. There was no emotion. He killed Danielle because it made his life easier.
The jury hears about the prosecution's most damning evidence, Danielle's stolen engagement ring.
I had to be the one to testify about the ring because I identified the ring. I actually had to look at that man. I had to sit there and look at him. Calvin Oliver sat there just staring daggers into me, is what he did, and tried everything he could to make me feel uncomfortable. And I took a big, deep breath, and I stared right back at him.
There was no explanation for the presence of this ring in Calvin Oliver's apartment, other than he took it off Danielle Jennings' dead finger.
On October 13th, 2000, after a 5-day trial, the jury delivers their verdict.
He was found guilty on all charges.
The judge sentences Calvin Oliver to life in prison.
When the verdict came through, we were all holding hands. We just knew justice had been served as far as it could be. I mean, we were glad, but it still wasn't gonna bring her back. Her mom was never the same again. It destroyed her. That horrible man took away an angel that was put here. She was a huge light to me, to her fiance, to her son. She was everything to a lot of people. I still, to this day, I still dream of her. There's not a day that goes by that I don't miss her.